Hello, and welcome to the Beautiful Truth Show. Today we'll be discussing memes. And the definition of memes, I'd say, was imitable behaviour that is passed on from mind to mind and can undergo processes analogous to natural selection of genes.
Yeah, I think that's... well, firstly, there's a legitimate sort of argument against the analogy, which is that ideas like memes are basically concepts that can be passed on through populations, but they aren't actually based on a code like genes are, and they don't replicate in the same way. So, on that sense, the analogy is a bad one, but they do undergo sort of mutations, like sliced bread is a mutation of the bread meme.
Yeah, exactly. As a meme mutates, like an idea that slicing bread, and the idea of slicing bread, for example, might spread. If people didn't like sliced bread, then it would die out because the environment, which is other people's ideas, would kind of kill it off.
Well, yeah, and it's a better meme than bread that you can't slice at all. So if you made bread that was too solid to slice, then it would be a bad meme. So it's kind of memes that latch on as being useful in some way are passed through from mind to mind more sort of prolifically than memes that are sort of bad. And that some memes do die out, like fax machines didn't really last for that long. They're kind of, I suppose people do use them to an extent, but they came out as the kind of next big thing, but they were sort of taken over by email.
Yeah, well, I suppose some memes can be replaced by better memes, like say like a gene that had a strong hair or something might be replaced, or replaced to make just harder heads in general. So that in that hard head, which to protect it from the rain or whatever, would take over the gene of hair. So so it's a gene does exactly the same thing, just better. Same as the emails or emails. Something does fax exactly the same, just better. So it's just completely replacing a whole new idea, a whole new meme. Same as a gene might replace the gene of hair. And I think genetically, you probably wouldn't have such a thing happening. It would be very unlikely, but it's but I'm sure there are similar analogies where another gene can do something better than a different gene.
Well, a lot of mutations genetically, it's like you could have mutation A that doesn't do anything without mutation B, and later on mutation B could come along and interact with mutation A and something that would influence the genes. So some like genes can lie dormant for periods of time and only interact when there's other genes involved as well.
Yeah, another bad, and I suppose more sort of good or bad analogy is the idea that there's genes are the mutations of genes are completely unlimited, and that anything could happen. There's only chance that it actually does something beneficial. With memes, the creation of different memes, that's also that's more controlled. It's not completely random. There are reasons that every idea we have isn't a completely random idea, and it's only chance that it's useful.
Yeah, but also I think it does have an element of randomness, because you could just be walking along and suddenly have a eureka moment. Just like an example would be, well, I don't know how true it is, but just for the sake of this analogy, the story about Newton being hit by the apple and sort of having a eureka moment. That's a sort of a meme being triggered by something quite random.
I suppose to say it was something completely random would be the same. Let's say saying like Aristotle, for example, wouldn't have had that idea because he didn't have. So it isn't that mimetic kind of construction or mutation wasn't completely random, because if it was completely random, there'd be just as much chance as Aristotle having it or as Newton having it. I suppose they wouldn't have. I agree that if they were both, if the idea was created in Aristotelian times, then they'd have they would have died off straight away because nobody would have known these calculations. But it would have come to the fruit at all in the first place.
But also, I think Newton was coming from a time when there were, he obviously must have had scientific knowledge that he was building upon. He probably didn't just like come up with it completely from scratch. So
so maybe the idea that like big things are attracted to small things are attracted to big things. That could be an idea that maybe how many millions and millions of people have had over the of civilization, and it's just before Newton. But the idea wouldn't the gene or the meme. I mean, like a gene wouldn't work by itself. Like a gene that makes my eyes really see a bit further. That wouldn't be any good if the whole eye existed. Yeah, if all these other genes weren't working. So it's like so it would have just been died off straight away. Same as that idea that small things attract to big things. It would have just died off straight away. So maybe it does mutate in the same way.
Yeah, I don't know. That's another meme might come along, and then that notion then becomes true. People might have speculated about evolution before it was proven. The idea did exist before Charles Darwin, but he sort of put it into a concise theory. But there were ideas that animals sort of changed over time, but they were sort of they didn't really catch on because they didn't have any evidence, and they didn't have a sort of decent idea about it. They might have thought mutations were passed on, like bodybuilders would have muscly children or something, which is not how it works. They might have thought that.
What was the last one you talked about then?
Like the idea of evolution prior to it being sort of proved by Charles Darwin.
I was going to say like Charles Darwin's one is a good example because there's no unlike Newton when he had his theory of mass attracted to other mass, it would have that needed some understanding of the environment, whereas Darwin's idea obviously needs the very simple kind of facts like animals evolve, but there are kind of animals didn't like from fossils they didn't used to be as advanced as they are now, and that's all you need is the idea that things can change, which is obviously can apply to anything. So they must have known things could change for a long time. So those two ideas are all you needed for that idea, and yet it's still
I think it can be boiled down to one idea, which is that two animals produce offspring that are not exact copies of the parent. They change.
It needs to be, but that the offspring would need to have the same. He'd have to have the new capability of making children like himself. I mean, like if genes didn't copy their mutations, then they wouldn't. Then their child wouldn't be a mutant. Their child would be just as similar as their parents. So that's like it needs to be. Two need to give offspring which are different to themselves, but that also needs to acquire the characteristic of making things like itself, not like its parents.
Yeah. So it's where are we going with this?
Straight from the point.
Well, I suppose that talking about how memes and natural selection are kind of intertwined in certain examples, like the example we put down here is the hunting techniques that tribes people used to have. If someone came up with a meme that was a really efficient way of hunting for fish or whatever, that would influence evolution in that those people would be successful in having a way of catching a lot of fish, so they'd have a better diet, or they'd be eating more, so there wouldn't be starvation. They'd have an advantage, evolutionary as well as. So there's a sort of meme that's influenced natural selection as well.
So you've got memes and genes in the way they're similar, they're parallel to each other in the fact that they're in a host and they're manipulating what the host does or how the host grows and if they're exactly the same in that way, and that you I suppose it wouldn't know how they grow mentally maybe. So so one gene might make the hunter's arm stronger, and a meme might make him throw in a certain way. And they're both these genes and memes are both doing two things to that hunter's hunting technique. and that's almost exactly the same. The only difference is the medium through which they travel. One travels from mind to mind, and the other travels in a completely different way.
I think that's the essentially what the difference is between genes and memes, is that a gene travels via replication, and a meme is from a sort of someone imitating the behaviour or listening to the ideas of someone else. So it's not accurate replication process.
I suppose some memes can replicate it, can't they? Like if I told you if you told me like an interesting fact, then I could replicate that meme in someone else who didn't have that fact. So it's kind of a replication process.
But I think memes have a much higher mutation rate than genes, because they haven't got a code that copies itself, and genes, it's rare that a mutation would be beneficial in a gene, and normally a lot of the time they copy themselves perfectly, but so the mutation rate in genes is a lot lower than it is with memes as well.
You could compare as well breeding cycles with social events. It's like animals would group up and breed and create offspring, and in social circles people would meet up and breed mimetic ideas, and then they'd get those mimetic ideas would go off in other hosts or the same hosts and go up to other hosts, and they'd kind of mimetically breed as well.
Yeah.
And it's the same way as.
I suppose an example of that would be the sort of Catholic or Christian notion that you should have a large family. So if you have a large family, you've got more hosts for the memes of Catholicism or Christianity, and the meme is going to become more prolific within the population, because it's encouraging the hosts to breed more hosts.
Yeah.
Also, another interesting thing would be the sort of what kind of arms races you'd get between different memes. Because obviously an example of that would be the creation and evolution debate. The memes kind of attacking one another, and some memes die out in that battle, and it's kind of a contest to keep up with the rival memes in the environment.
They also have their allies as well as in the genes that are also rival and kind of fight. So so genes working together with memes. So fight another gene, another meme. For example, in creationism, we have the meme which makes us the meme of creationism, the idea, and then with the gene we have the idea of faith. Just believing something